Welcome, everyone. My name is Niamh Shanahan from the marketing team here at Populo. We're delighted to have you on our webinar today, Future-Proof Your Leadership Communications, Trends and Strategies for 2025. We all know with so much uncertainty and turbulence in our worlds, effective leadership communications has never been more critical. And in today's session, we're going to delve into the practical approaches of human-centered leadership, AI integration, inclusive practices, and sustainability-driven strategy, all with the goal of helping you to future-proof your organization and drive success. We're thrilled to have Zora Artis with us, a leading alignment and communication specialist, to share her insights. So Zora is based in Australia. I'm dialing in from Ireland, and I know you, our wonderful audience, come from all over the globe. So due to such variety of time zones, we're actually pre-recording this session. But please do still use the Q&A and chat function, as our Populo team will be monitoring it in real time. And Zora has kindly offered to follow up with any of your leadership comms questions after the webinar. We'll also share a recording with everyone who's registered, so don't worry about that part. So now I'm going to hand over to Zora to introduce herself and dive into our session. Hi, Zora.
Hello, Niamh. Thank you so much for having me today. I really do appreciate it. The opportunity to talk to the Populo community is one that I really value. So thanks so much. As you said, I am an alignment brand and communication strategist. I have been working as a leadership advisor, facilitator, and coach for quite a number of years, over 3 decades or so, across quite a diverse range of industries and sectors, ranging from not-for-profits, public sector, through private and corporate organisations. I'm CEO of Artis Advisory. This is my 5th year running my own consultancy firm. I'm also the co-founder of the Alignment People and a partner of Mirror Mirror Alignment. Now, I've got numerous sort of post-nominals after my name, but what it basically means is that I am a certified company director. I have a certification as a strategic communication marketing professional and marketing communication professional, also as a fellow of the IABC Fellow of the Australian Marketing Institute and founding research fellow of Team Flow Institute, and I've been recognised for various awards in leadership and in communication. So I'll just kick off straight off from here. So this is a quote from David LaRocca from EY Oceania. So it's got to be confronting, because if it's not, you're not getting to the heart of the matter. And that pretty much says that leadership is tough. And this quote reminds us of that if we're not willing to dig into the hard stuff, we'll miss what really matters. And this sets the tone for our session today. I will mention EY Oceania later in the piece. So it's very much a reflection that David had a couple of weeks ago at a conference here in Australia on culture, where he was talking about the major whole of firm transformation that they're undergoing around culture and the hard work that it actually is. So in terms of where are we at right now, I think it's important that we take a look at our current landscape. So leadership communication doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's deeply shaped by culture and the broader environment. And right now, that's full of challenges. So when we're looking at setting the scene to future-proof leadership communications, we really need to tackle these big 4 themes head on. So it's uncertainty and complexity, the leadership confidence gap, culture expectation gaps, and evolving trust and experience trends. 4 very important themes to tackle. The first one is all around uncertainty and complexity is at an all-time high. The pace of change isn't just fast, it's relentless in actual fact. And as you can see by the bottom bullet point, there's a statistic from, I think it's Accenture, that over the past 3 years, the pace of change has increased by 184%, which is amazing. So it's continuous. We're also dealing with everything ranging from geopolitical shifts through to the rapid rise of AI. You know, there's that arm wrestle that's going on between flexibility and the mandated back to office. There's also lots of economic uncertainty, which is driven by political landscapes and the changes that we've got there. So leaders are navigating more challenges than ever before, and it's often with incomplete information. And that's where communication comes in. So we provide that clarity amongst the chaos, helping leaders to connect the dots, to cut through the noise, and also to ensure that employees feel informed, supported, and engaged. And even when the way forward isn't obvious, in times like these, that communication is our strategic advantage, and we need to be able to use it really well. The next point that I want to cover off is that cultural expectations and reality gap. And this is where things really get real. So culture exists by design or by default. And it matters a lot, irrespective of whether it's good or bad. It impacts organizational performance, it impacts structure, it impacts so many different things. And employees and stakeholders now expect much more from leaders than ever. They want purpose, they want accountability, and they want action. But there's a catch. Leaders often think that they're delivering, while employees and stakeholders see a gap. And communication is how we bridge that disconnect. We can help leaders align their actions with their words and ensure their messaging reflects what people value and is real. And this is about making culture tangible and showing employees that they're part of something bigger. There's a series of there's a range of research that's just come out from Australia's The Culture Institute. It's literally fresh research. As you can see, numbers don't lie. So this research shows you that culture really does matter. Healthy culture impacts in a significant way. It results in 3 times better performance in organisations than those with poor cultures or toxic cultures. However, only 30% of employees feel that they're well led, and 75%, that's a whopping 75%, report experiencing toxic cultures in the past 5 years. And that's really, really scary. And that directly impacts productivity, it impacts morale, and it impacts brand reputation. And what's at the root cause of toxic environments? It's leadership. So senior leadership, 68% of employees attribute toxicity to senior leaders. Now, communication professionals have quite a powerful role to play in reshaping these cultures, starting with how leaders communicate and how they connect with their teams, helping to articulate the values, helping people feel connected to the values, ensuring that behaviours are understood. There's a whole gamut of things where leadership communication comes to play. The next area that I'd like to focus on is the leadership confidence gap. So there was research recently that has been going on for a number of years around leadership confidence. And that showed that leadership confidence is misaligned. And when it's misaligned, it creates this ripple effect through an organisation. It undermines trust, collaboration, performance, and culture. So what we are seeing is that CEOs and boards often express greater confidence in the executive team. And they focus on things like the big picture, the strategy, the risk, the long-term goals. Meanwhile, the other leaders who are in that executive team and the next 2 tiers down, what they call the next generation of leaders, aren't as confident in that C-suite, which is interesting. So you've got boards and CEOs who are way more confident than those that are actually in the C-suite and the next 2 tiers down. Now that's a challenge. So you've got the C-suite that are dealing with that increasing complexity that I was speaking about earlier. They're much closer to operational challenges. And then you've got those next 2 levels of leadership who are tasked with executing the strategy, but they often feel unsupported or they're unclear about how to deliver, which leads to friction between expectations and reality. And this is where team alignment at the top of the pyramid, I suppose, and across the next couple of tiers is really critical, because it doesn't matter what communication tries to do across the rest of the organisation in trying to align everyone if we haven't got alignment working at the top top levels. So team alignment's really important, and that requires the courage to uncover what's holding them back and to use the dialogic communication to achieve a shared understanding of strategic priorities and the actions to move forward. And leadership communication plays a vital role here. So it's helping leaders craft an aligned narrative and communicate it clearly and confidently to avoid inconsistency and uncertainty. So the research report comes from Russell Reynolds and Associates. So they do the Leadership Confidence Gap, and they also do the Global Leadership Monitor. So it comes out every year. And Russell Reynolds is a large leading global executive research firm that does a lot in leadership development as well. And so, they look at this space, and as I said, it's a global study. And it gives us a much clearer picture of leadership perceptions across 3 key areas in executive team. So 3 key areas that they're looking at are leaders in the ELT modeling the right culture and behaviours. Do they work well together? So what's the team dynamics like? And do they embrace change well? So these numbers here, 53%, 56% and 59%, they reflect the perceptions of all the leaders from board, CEO, the C-suite, and the next two levels down. It doesn't reflect the broader employee base. So there's misalignment here, and it's not just about internal dynamics, it's also about external relationships and the organisation's reputation. And when the leadership confidence is out of sync, it undermines trust, weakens collaboration, and slows performance. So 53% of all those leaders believe that the ELT modelled the right culture and behaviours. And earlier I said that culture is basically got a problem. And if only 53% are modelling the right behaviour and the right culture, that reflects why there is a problem. 56% only agree that the ELT works effectively. So, that means that they're making decisions the right way, they're aligned across priorities, goals and actions and what they need to be doing. So only 56%. And 59% believe that they embrace change well. So that is a real problem, given the huge pace of change that we're currently dealing with. So the confidence level in that is problematic, and it's concerning. The next area, and we all know about Edelman's Trust Barometer that they've been running for over 20 years now. But there's also research in trust that's been undertaken by various other organisations. And one in particular wasn't specifically looking at trust, but it was looking at employee experience and customer experience. And it's an organisation called Qualtrics. And they do a lot of work in this space, and they have an institute that does a lot of the research. And literally this research has just come out in November. The global research on EX, on employee experience, and CX, on customer experience trends for 2025 is the research. And they've also looked at thousands of pieces of data across organisations they've worked with that are high performing. And they've looked at the data of EX and looked at where there are correlations. And what they have found is one of the biggest issues is trust. It's declining, and declining significantly. So we've got increasing employee and customer skepticism. And when we're talking here about internal within organisations, so I won't go into the CX side, but suffice to say that although customer experience levels are still high, trust is a problem because of misinformation, disinformation, and polarization. But when we're looking at EX, trust is correlated directly with employee experience outcomes. So engagement, inclusion, well-being, and exceeding expectations. And the highest predictors of employee trust in senior leaders are responding to employee feedback, valuing diverse perspectives, work processes that allow employees to be as productive as they can be, open and honest communication, so that definitely comes up, and continuous improvement in how work gets done. So with the rise of misinformation and complexity in communications, there's that growing need for clear, reliable, and consistent messaging from leaders. And trust isn't just something that's nice to have, it's essential, as we know. It's the driver of engagement, well-being, and performance, as I said earlier. But here's the challenge. Leaders are often seen as competent, but not caring. I'll repeat that. So they're seen as competent, but not caring. And that gap between head and heart is where communication comes in. Not just leadership communications from the communication professional perspective, but from the leader's perspective. So in terms of the numbers that we're seeing here, these are the numbers that are showing up from Qualtrics in their EX Trends report and from the Institute. So 63% is the level of trust in leaders. This is by employees across thousands of different organisations across the world. So there's been a decrease over the last 3 years, so it's continuing to decline. And these numbers hit quite hard. So only 56% of employees feel that their leaders care about them. 56%. Now, 67 and 68% of them, believe the leaders are competent, or they believe that the leader's behaviour aligns with organisational values, which they describe as integrity. So that is problematic, because if you think of trust, it's like a three-legged stool. And there's work by Frances Fry and Anne Morris, who are these two amazing women who have a podcast, a TED podcast called Fixable, that's really worth listening to. And they have a framework around trust, and it's called the trust triangle. The three elements in that trust triangle are authenticity, logic, and empathy. And they correlate with what we have here. So empathy is care or benevolence, as the Qualtrics or XM Institute folk refer to it. The competence is around the credibility and the logic, which is the rigor in the thinking, and the authenticity is the other piece, which with XM Institute is referred to as their integrity. So they're very similar. So trust is that three-legged stool. And if one of the legs on that stool is wobbly or not really working properly, then you're going to fall over and trust falls apart. And that's what this is showing. It's showing that trust has fallen apart, and it's really important that we work on it. Communication is how we can close the gap. We can help leaders demonstrate empathy, acknowledge challenges, and celebrate wins in ways that resonate with employees. And so when people feel valued, trust improves. And if trust doesn't exist, then people don't listen. They don't hear leaders. They can keep talking, but they won't listen. Now, I asked Bob Sutton, who's a really well-known organisational development expert, and he's based at Stanford University. I shared with him the leadership confidence data, and I asked him what he thought about that. So after holding his head in his hands, he responded with this. So the hallmark of great leaders is that they are confident, but not really sure. They charge ahead, but with the humility to constantly look for what's going wrong and to encourage people to tell them when it is. So great leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about the confidence to act and the humility to listen and adapt. And communication is what turns humility into strength. Now, before I go on into the trends, I'm going to invite Neve back in to launch a quick poll with us.
Thanks, Zora. So leadership comms is predominantly one of the top 5, if not top 3 themes our customers in all industries would use the Populo platform for to communicate on. So if anyone on the call would like to see how other best-in-class companies can execute a measure across their channels for leadership comms, please do click on the poll appearing on your screen right now, and one of our experts will reach out to you shortly. So thanks. Leave that up for another few seconds. Thanks all for answering the question. And now, Zora, thanks. We'll hand back to you again.
Thanks so much, Neve. And I definitely agree. It's worth filling out the poll and answering those questions and getting in touch with Populo. So let's start with the first trend. The first trend is human-centered leadership. Building trust and openness is foundational to resilience and growth, and that's definitely what we need in uncertain times. And you'll see that a lot of executives, particularly at CEOs, are really pushing for growth at the moment. So human-centered leadership isn't just about being nice. It's about creating environments where people feel safe to contribute, innovate, and to grow themselves. It's also building that empathy and vulnerability into leadership communication to demonstrate that care. And when we're thinking about what are the strategies that we can apply from a leadership communication perspective, there are a number of them, and this is only covering 4. So the first one is definitely around dynamic listening, and that's not just at organizational level, but at team levels. So there are structured feedback loops that we can create and incorporate in the work that we do with leaders and with teams across the business. You can have active listening, passive listening as well, but we can have listening campaigns. And I'll explain about listening campaigns in one of the other areas as well. And we can also have employee input channels. So there are ways that we can listen and demonstrate that we are hearing people, and we need to be able to then feed that back through. So seeking feedback and acting on it's really important. And I saw some statistics recently which said that over 90% of large organizations run employee surveys, employee engagement surveys. So they run them in whichever form it is. But only half or less than half of employees in those organizations feel that their organizations are consistently acting on the results. So they don't hear back from them. So of course, then the trust in that survey, those surveys, is going to reduce. So it's really important that we act visibly on the feedback that we've received and share it back to our people, to the employees. And we can also run structured team-based 360-degree conversations. So we've all heard of the 360 review. This isn't that. It's about having, if you're creating that psychologically safe space in teams, we can share and provide feedback on what works really well for us from the other person and what could improve how we work if the other person changed something up. And we do it in a respectful and safe space. It's a really dynamic way to do feedback within a team. It's also really important that we understand psychological safety and the connection with accountability. So there's lots of conversations about psychological safety and what it is, and it's almost becoming a buzzword, which is slightly frightening. But accountability is around commitment. And so psychological safety is creating that safe space so people feel that they can speak up and they're heard without recriminations. And accountability is that internal commitment we have to deliver, and the two work hand in hand. So coaching leaders on how to create those psychosocial safe spaces and modeling commitment through behavior, actions, and messages is where leadership communication can come into it. And so, that's through that transparent messaging, through active listening, and also through modeling those behaviors that they want to see in their teams. And transparency and empathy is really about working with leaders so they understand how that to balance challenges with optimism. Empathy, if they practice it well, empathy allows leaders to show that they're human. They can walk in each other's shoes, in other people's shoes, and they can show that they see them and that they understand them. And it's really important to practice that and to do it consistently. I'm going to share with you a story that is from the sporting world, and the Richmond Football Club. And we've also, I'm sure a lot of you have watched that amazing TV show, Ted Lasso, and there is a Richmond Football Club there. But in reality, there is a Richmond Football Club in real life, and it happens to be here in Australia. It's an Aussie rules football team, and they play in the Australian Football League, the AFL. And the AFL is the premier sporting competition in Australia. It's massive and huge. It's a huge business. So sporting teams are huge business organisations as well. And Richmond's transformation is an incredible story. You know, they're a team that were underperforming for more than 3 decades, and they had this big, hairy, audacious 10-year goal and strategy that they put into place. And they were partway through that strategy in 2016, making inroads, pretty significant inroads, and then 2016 it sort of fell apart. And the image on the left is the team walking off the ground after their last match in 2016. So they were out of 18 teams, they were around 14 or 15 or so on the ladder. So not great, not doing well at all, and they were struggling. And what they did was between 2016 and 2017, they really worked on their culture and they worked on vulnerability. So they implemented what is called what they call Triple H sessions. So that's personal storytelling focused on 3 things: hardship, highlights, and heroes. And this sort of work has been done in the US as well, I think in basketball and football as well. And what they did was they realized that showing leadership with vulnerability was really important. Leadership across the whole team, not just individuals, across the whole team. And they created a really trusting space. That psychosocial safety was in place, and individuals could get up and share these personal stories, and the others listened and asked questions, but they listened genuinely and listened to them. And what that did was it changed the culture of the team, it changed the dynamics, it created that safety, and it demonstrated how strong leadership with vulnerability really is. And it aligned them to their purpose and to what they wanted to do. It shifted their culture completely. And the photo on the right is the same team, and they won their first premiership in 37 years. And that is huge for Richmond Football Club. And they continued to win another 2 premierships by 2020, which was basically winning 3 premierships, being financially sound, strong membership, a whole range of different goals was set, and they achieved them all in that 10 years. It's an incredible story, and I've got to know it intimately as I've been writing about it for a chapter in a book that I'm co-authoring on cohesion, alignment, and strategic communication that'll be out later next year. The next piece I wanted to talk about in this specifically is understanding emotional dynamics. So we can really elevate leadership communication as well as change communication by understanding the unconscious brain to regulate emotion and adapt our communication in social context and change. So what I'm showing you here is the SCARF model, and it's a real game changer. So we are unconsciously triggered by certain things in our brain, and we move towards a threat state or towards a reward state. A threat state is 4 times more powerful than a reward state. So if we're triggered by one of the 5 things on the left, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, or fairness, and if we feel that we're threatened, we will react negatively. We will not respond well to change or to a particular type of communication or whatever's going on in a social context. And it's as powerful as physical pain. So our body and our brain reacts in the same sort of way. So if we understand those emotional triggers, that helps us understand how people respond to change. So things like fairness, autonomy, and relatedness. And when leaders address these triggers and communication professionals address these triggers in their communication, they reduce resistance and they can build trust. And that's really, really important in times of uncertainty and when people are potentially seeking stability and connection, or perhaps they want to have some sense of control or to be treated fairly. It's really important to understand how those work. The next trend is all around AI, and AI is here to stay, and it's changing the way we work. And this trend, I'm not going to talk to you about what tools to use, risk appetite, or FOBO, the fear of becoming obsolete. This is around leaders needing to balance the potential of AI with ethical responsibility and human connection. So as I said, AI is transforming the way we work, but with great power comes great responsibility. So we need to really think about responsible AI use and adoption, how we can then balance productivity and well-being, and how we can maintain ethical standards. So leaders need to be able to communicate how AI aligns with organisational values, ensuring that employees understand its role as a tool to enhance and not replace their contribution. And we can, as communication professionals, we can help frame that AI adoption as a positive step, and balancing that productivity with those ethical considerations and a human connection. So when we talk about responsible AI, that is around ethics. So why we're doing something, the performance, how we're doing it, and governance, what we're doing. And we need to be able to support leaders with the narratives around ethical adoption and emphasize the role of human potential and agency. And we need to use responsible and ethical frameworks for the adoption and governance, and we need to be able to communicate those and get buy-in from people in using it. And using AI for productivity and well-being, this is really about demonstrating positive use cases and showcasing the impact on ways of working through data and stories. And you can use that within an organisation as well as outside, so internal and external merge. And we're providing as communication professionals, we can help with the insights from data to help guide leadership decisions. And we can also create personalised communication. And I know Populo has got great capability in terms of personalising communication with the tools that you have. Using AI tools is important so we can segment audiences, we can tailor messages, we can create content, but it all has to be done with human direction and oversight. And I must emphasize that it's really, really important. It's about co-intelligence, not just artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence. So it's really critical. I'm going to share with you a case study which you wouldn't necessarily think is about AI, but AI is really important in it. And earlier on, I talked about EY in Oceania and what David LaRocca, the managing partner of EY Oceania, said. Now, going back a couple of years, in 2022, there was a tragic incident. One of the senior auditors in their Sydney office was found dead after a Friday night out, and she went back to the office and took her own life. And it was tragic that the event raised serious questions about the workplace culture of EY and other professional services firms much more broadly. They commissioned a review immediately after this with a really credible and high-profile woman who was a former human rights commissioner. She took 9 months listening to 4,500 employees, and she wrote a report that she presented back to LaRocca and the leadership team. It was a very comprehensive report with over 20 recommendations across 4 different areas. Now, what he did with that report was he insisted on sharing that report with all the staff, the whole report fully. And then he shared it publicly. And this was at a time that there was a lot of angst around professional service firms, their culture, the lack of integrity that was happening here in Australia with PwC in particular, but the government was reviewing all professional service firms and they were about to be in front of the Senate at a committee, or David LaRocca was, but he still released this. And he felt it was really important to be transparent and show that they listened. The report in its entirety showed that 94% of the people felt safe, but 74% felt excluded. A third of employees worked more than 51 hours a week. 10% regularly worked more than 60 hours a week. 15% of people experienced bullying, 10% sexual harassment, and 8% racism. So the experiences people felt weren't the same across the board. They differed. And interestingly enough, The women leaders in the firm weren't surprised, but the men were totally shocked. And that says something about men and women in leadership. Now, those recommendations across those 4 areas covered 4 things: make it safer, improve leader capability, remove harmful behaviours, and reduce working hours. So the biggest thing was about that they worked on immediately. They worked on those things, but it was the working hours, which is where AI comes into it. Before I tackle the AI part, what they learned from a leadership and leadership communication perspective was to anchor on the why, really talk about the why they were doing what they were doing. So they decided to completely overhaul the culture, be proactive, and spend time listening more and talking with the people about the results and what to do about it. And out of that came the adoption of AI on a major scale across the whole business. And they spent a lot of time mastering AI because they wanted to reduce the pressure of the long working hours, and they were looking for ways to do that. They found that the super users of AI on average save between 7 to 14 hours a week. And they actually have a code. So as with most professional service firms, they have charge codes for activities that they do at work. And that's how they know. They have a charge code for using AI. So that's how they know how many hours are saved across the board on average. The time that they save, the employees can then use in a way which they call thrive time, and they can choose how to use that. And in particular, they use it across CSR initiatives across the organisation. And the impact of those CSR initiatives in the last 12 months has been shown to have increased by 50%, which is quite significant and shows the impact of using AI and changing culture and being genuine and working on it. But there is still a long way to go. The next one is around leadership and inclusive and diverse leadership. Now, you might wonder why I've included that, particularly considering the various political changes that have happened in various countries across the world. However, I don't think it's optional. I think it's essential, and it's essential for innovation and alignment. And this trend is all about fostering belonging and trust through better communication. So inclusive leadership is what drives better decision-making, innovation, and engagement. And we can work on, as communication professionals, we can really work on building trust through understanding diverse perspectives and helping leaders to make sure that they're also have got the capability to do that and to do that well. It's also through transparent and fair communication that we can foster inclusivity and belonging, and also drive innovation and alignment by engaging with diverse voices across the organisation. So communication professionals play that critical role. They help leaders tell stories that resonate across diverse teams. They foster psychological safety. They can help foster psychological safety and create that belonging. And it's showing that every voice matters and that diversity isn't just acknowledged, it's celebrated. And some of the ways we can do that with the strategies is inclusion with day-to-day work. So we're engaging employees and leaders, and we can, by engaging them, and we can co-create rituals. We can promote these internally. We can showcase how everyday respect works and is being done through our behaviours. There is a framework that has just been released, which will be shared with you. The link to it will be shared with you. It's called the Focused Framework. And it's a framework that's been created by the Champions of Change here in Australia, who work a lot in the gender equality space and equity space. And their work has been up to the UN in New York. The Focus Framework is all about it's about resourcing, helping people to understand how to foster respect, inclusion, and belonging. And a lot of the practical tools and resources that are in there relate directly to leadership communication. Focus is an acronym. The F is for treating people fairly and equally. The O is about being open-minded and intentional. The C is demonstrating care for others. U is for promoting unity and alignment. S is around providing safe environment. E is about engaging in open and constructive discussions, and D is about celebrating and valuing diversity. So it's really, really valuable. It's a great resource. There's also dialogic conversations, which are important. So this is around facilitating conversations that turn dialogue into action and focus on critical issues for alignment and collaboration. And you can use SCARF again to guide those inclusive and sort of effective dialogue, whether it's through your business as usual sort of work or whether it's in change contexts. Being much more self-aware of your own triggers, and we can share with you a link to do your own evaluation on SCARF. It's a free tool you can use, and it'll show your own bias as well. So you can understand that and impact how that applies to communication. And the other thing where communicators can help is help lift the capability of leaders in being able to communicate better. So we can train and coach leaders to develop communication capabilities like listening, emotional intelligence, conversation skills, giving and receiving feedback, and storytelling, all really critical. In terms of SCARF, applying it to inclusion and belonging, this is an example of how you could do it. So when it comes to status, that's how we relate to others in terms of how we see ourselves against looking at others. It's around acknowledging and valuing contributions. So we can recognise achievements that respect diversity and elevate diverse voices. Certainty is provide clarity in our comms and in expectations. So consistently communicating to reduce ambiguity and having clear roles and goals. Autonomy is about encouraging choice and ownership and providing flexibility in approaching tasks and empowering employees to shape those initiatives where you can. Relatedness is around building connections and fostering inclusion. So safe spaces for sharing perspectives respectfully and encouraging mentoring and peer support. And fairness is all around ensuring that we've got transparency and equitable treatment. So we're sharing the why behind decisions and initiatives, and we're embedding policies for fairness and addressing biases. So there's all sorts of ways that you can use that model around communication. The final trend that I'm talking about is about sustainability-driven leadership. And this goes beyond ESG. It's about connecting purpose to action. It's about embedding long-term value and responsible impact into an organisation's core strategy. So it's not just about ESG, as I said. So sustainability-driven leadership is more than just hitting those targets from an ESG perspective and demonstrating how the organisation's working. It's about aligning actions with purpose that resonates across generations. So it's an opportunity to really have cross-generational appeal, which is really important when we're, at the stage where we've got 5 generations in the workplace. It's also about building resilience and trust and attracting the right sort of talent that is driven by purpose. In terms of the sort of communication approaches, communication professionals can help leaders craft narratives that connect organisational goals with employee and stakeholder values. And this isn't just about doing the right thing, it's about making people feel like they're part of something meaningful and lasting. So we can articulate the why behind actions and weave those into narratives. We can engage diverse stakeholders across sustainability initiatives for buy-in for collective responsibilities. So that's internal and external. We can co-create campaigns with them that demonstrate and champion purpose-led initiatives. We can showcase the impact we have as a business or as teams, but we can showcase that transparently. So by that, I mean that we're sharing successes as much as we're sharing challenges as well. And we can also look at reworking leadership profiles to incorporate a sustainability-driven mindset and achievements. And that's particularly important when you're doing sustainability reports, because a lot of those are read through by AI, and they're looking for those things specifically in the leadership teams, specifically to have those sorts of profiles. So it's the sort of language that you need to think about and use. We've also got storytelling. So storytelling with intent for connection, and training and coaching all levels of leadership to do this and to practice that internally, that to build confidence and capability. And once they've built that confidence and capability, they will feel much more confident being able to use it internally as well as externally. So it becomes ritualized and just part of how they communicate, and it'll elevate them in terms of being good communicators, or going from good to great communicators. So that's really important. So I'm going to share with you an example of one of my former clients, and this client is also a client of Populo. So Oricon is an organisation. It's in the Asia Pacific region. It's an engineering, design and advisory company. It is an owner-managed company, so it's a private business, but a lot of the leaders and owners of the business. And there's 7,000 employees across 11 countries. Australia and New Zealand are their primary market. They're also building quite strongly across the rest of Asia Pacific. And they've been around for quite a while. Now, to them, sustainability is really, really important. They define sustainability as creating long-term client, employee and environmental value. So it's across the board. And a couple of years ago, they were working on their new blueprint, which is their new strategy for the next few years. And in doing that, they decided to revisit their purpose statement to make sure that it really connected with everyone. And they had data because they could tell what their shareholders, leaders thought, what employees thought, what customers thought about their purpose, and did it really mean something to them. And they felt that there were some holes there. And at the same time as developing that blueprint, rethinking the purpose statement, they expanded their offer to cover sustainability in the advisory space, in transition risk, in a whole range of different areas that relate to sustainability. And at that point in time, like even 4 years ago, before that, from a sustainability perspective, if you looked at the list of firms that were strong in the sustainability advisory space, in the top 200 firms, they didn't even feature at all. And that has significantly changed since. So they looked at their purpose statement, which was also their tagline, which was bringing ideas to life. And they decided they needed to work on that and alter it and do it in a way that was really going to connect with people. The people and culture team and the brand marketing and communication team worked hand in hand. So it was a collaboration. The whole project was sponsored by the group's CEO. And what they came up with was a reimagined purpose. So their reimagined purpose was bringing ideas to life to imagine and co-create with our clients a better future for people and the planet. They also reworked their ethos, which was really important to them, which sets out how they, as individuals and as an organisation, want to work together and work with others. And it's integral to them to actually achieving their strategy. So that's that, around that strategic alignment piece. And what they ended up doing was they brought together internal and external communication. So it worked really closely together. And they created a content-led brand repositioning campaign. And at the centre of that was a video called Dear World from Tilly. And this campaign was used to unify and create shared meaning within the business. It was, before it went out, all of the messaging, the work that they were going to do was tested internally with leaders, with employees. It was tested with some clients as well. So they tested everything to make sure it landed. And that created that shared meaning within the business. People really felt that it was about them and that they had a role in this business that was meaningful. So it connected across multiple generations. It strengthened their employee brand and their leaders in graduate employment as well as veteran employment, so they cover the whole gamut. And it also repositioned the brand in the market. They are now considered to be in the top 5 firms in terms of sustainability in that list that they weren't in for, in the top 200. Now they're in the top 5. So it's worked really, really well. The repositioning of purpose and in turn sustainability is then used as a benchmark for how they make decisions, how they approach work, and it underpins their approach to awards, which is really, really important in the B2B space. So I'm going to play for you their Hello World video, and hopefully this works. So I'm going to play that for you so you can see it.
People call me Tilly.
Oops. Just pause that and take it to the beginning. Okay.
Dear world, hello, I'm Matilda, but people call me Tilly. I know I'm just a 10-year-old kid, but I want to talk about something important. Something that's important to me and should be important to you. See, I'll be 21 in 2033, and I'll be 50 in 2062. And the decisions you make now will change the way the world is then. What kind of planet will you leave me? How can you make sure I have a job where I can make a difference? And how can you help people care more about each other? I don't have the answers, but I hope you do. You're the adults. Please don't forget about me and my friends. Love, Tilly.
Now, I'm sure you'll agree that that is a beautiful video. It's really effective. It received a IABC Gold Quill for excellence in the video category, but also their internal communication campaign also received a Gold Quill for excellence. So congratulations to Oricon. It's an incredible job that they did in terms of really connecting back to purpose, to sustainability, and looking at it beyond just that ESG lens. It's much, much broader, and everything is totally woven into everything they do. The bringing ideas to life is now woven in across messaging internally all the time. It's linked back. So it's not just used as an external tagline, but it's meant to mean something for people, and people are really respecting and seeing it that way. So in terms of leadership communication, it's really at the heart of everything, of all the 4 trends that we've explored. So human-centered leadership, AI and data-driven decision-making, inclusive and diverse leadership, and sustainability-driven leadership. It's at the centre of all of those. So the 4 trends we've explored are very much shaping the future of leadership communication. And what makes these trends impactful are the strategies that you can put into practice. These are the practical tools that you can use to support leaders and their teams. And by applying these strategies, we help leaders inspire trust, connect people to purpose, and create alignment that drives meaningful and lasting impact. So with human-centered leadership, it's around building trust. So we're prioritizing empathy, psychological safety, accountability, and clear and open communication. We're balancing AI with empathy and ethics by using AI responsibly to enhance productivity whilst prioritising ethical considerations, employee well-being, and maintaining human connection. Inclusive leadership, fostering belonging. It's really around engaging those diverse voices through transparent and inclusive practices. And we can use the SCARF framework to create a sense of belonging. And sustainability-driven leadership for long-term impact. This is around aligning organisational purpose with sustainability goals to build resilience, trust, and cross-generational alignment. And this is a quote from the CEO of the Australian Museum, Kim Mackay. And she said at the Culture conference in November in Sydney, she said, communication, it's the most important thing to get things moving. It's hard to say all that. So I think that's really important to state. She led a complete transformation of the Australian Museum, and she emphasised this was the most critical thing for her. And we've covered a lot today. We've covered a lot in terms of the 4 key trends, the practical strategies, and some of the examples of how communication can really future-proof leadership in a world with such constant and fast change. But the bottom line is this: leadership communication has the power to shape trust, drive alignment, and connect people to purpose. As communication professionals, the work we do matters. It supports leaders, helps build cultures, and ensures that strategies are not just plans, but actions that inspire. So take these insights, share them, and use them to spark conversations with your leaders, whether it's fostering inclusion, navigating AI, or aligning purpose with action. The strategies we've discussed today are tools that you can use and you can start applying straight away. So thank you for being here and for everything you do to make communication that force for connection and impact. And if you have any questions, ideas, or you want to continue the conversation, just don't hesitate to reach out. You can scan the QR code here to connect with my LinkedIn, or you can find me via my website, artisadvisory.com. And remember, the work we do as communication professionals has that power to shape how leaders lead, how teams connect, and how organisations thrive. And thank you for being here again today. And over to you, Neve.
Zora, thanks so much for that. It was so insightful, and I know you've given everyone a huge amount of food for thought. I thought the Richmond Football Club and the EY Oceania and the Oracan stories were so powerful, and I get goosebumps every time I watch that Oracan video. So thanks so much for sharing. I'd like to encourage everyone to connect with Zora on LinkedIn. She's an incredible SME and well worth following. Again, just to remind everyone, don't worry, we will be following up on your questions after today's session. Thanks to you all for joining, and we look forward to having you on again with us very soon. Thanks, everybody.